For those of you that don't know me, my name is Dan Clifford. I will be acting in the role of our capable leader, Dennis Lamoureux. I see you're on the line, Angel. I'm going to wait about 2 minutes before we really kick things off, and then I will take roll to make sure that we have a quorum.
Sounds good.
Yeah, Brent here, just I guess to piggyback off of Julie's comments. The first comment, I guess we currently have a public agency running the administration right now, so I don't see the issues with that. But I do agree with some of the virtual aspects that Julie pointed out.
Okay. Thank you, Brent.
Yeah, this is Gary Van Dam. Commenting on Julie's reply. I believe also that both bids are too high. I think that the assessments are just going to be too high for the ratepayers to pay those kind of amounts. So I agree with Julie on that.
Okay, thank you, Gary.
Yeah, Dan, this is John Eucastet. I agree with Mr. Van Dam and Julie Kell.
Okay, that was John Eucastet. Van Dam. Yeah. All right. Thank you, folks. Anybody else who has not yet had an opportunity to provide comment? Julie, can you provide some additional information on that so that there can be some specific direction to the board so that they can flesh that out?
Well, without bringing up the other party's name, because I haven't spoken to them about bringing it up, there is a water right owner here that has had some pretty contentious meetings and situations with RGS. And that's as far as I can go with that. So they do have a history, and they are Exhibit 4 right holders in our valley.
Okay, so the conflict would just be that they've gotten crosswise with them.
Yeah, it's been a very difficult situation.
Okay, it's not a situation where RGS has done work for them, which is in my mind kind of the more typical conflict.
Right. No, they have not.
Okay, all right.
Not that I know of. Not that I know of, Jim.
Let me comment, Gary Van Dam again. It is my understanding that there was some work done there, but I don't want to get out in front of myself. And I think that we have to look at that first to consider them.
Look at what I would say, and these are my words.
Conflict of interest.
That they've done work for an Exhibit 4?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, for the party involved. And like I said, I'm pretty certain of this, but we have to verify.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? I'm curious, did they act in some kind of unprofessional manner? Did they do something underhanded, or what was the conflict? Would it relate to them in a professional?
What I had heard, and like I said, this is just off the cuff, guys, so don't hold me to it, but what I had heard is that they did work for them, and so there would be a conflict for them working for another agency.
Okay. It will be tough, and I guess what we can do is just call it out to the board and then allow the board to investigate it further when they're performing their interviews. I think we've probably put about as much meat on this bone as we're going to get. But it will be noted that there is the existence or perhaps a hearsay suggestion of a potential conflict.
Right. Yeah, I'd like to make another comment. AVAC had a meeting the other night, a director's meeting, and it was brought up that we possibly would consider taking on the Watermaster role again as the administrative staff. And the consensus of the board, there was not a vote, but the consensus of the board was overwhelming. And so I just want the advisory board to know that.
Okay. And I will say, speaking for myself, that as an Exhibit 4 holder of a water right out there, we would prefer to have an outside administrator. Not that I have any problems with what AVEC has done so far. I think that they've done a wonderful job, and I would say that over and over again. But to go back to the issue that we're talking about as far as conflicts are concerned, I think in some respects it's going to be difficult to engineer that out of a direct relationship with AVEC acting as administrator. I say all that understanding that AVEC is doing us a major favor thus far, and I appreciate it. And I don't want my comments to be interpreted as being negative or a suggestion that there's been any issue or anything of that nature. So anyhow,
Dan, is there any way we can table the decision and based on Gary's input right now to see if AVEC wait on them? I think I understand your point, but sounds like if AVEC was willing to do it, they'd be giving it no problem this time.
well,
Can I jump in real quick?
yeah, go ahead, Angel.
Okay, so at the board meeting, the Watermaster will be interviewing these two consultants for the position. At this time, I do know that AVEC does wish to follow through with this process and interview. So I just wanted to put that out there.
No, Angel, thank you. And I think that's good information. And I'm certainly, I don't want to give Gary your suggestion short shrift, but I think we do owe it to these applicants to follow through with the process. We've set something in motion. I think we need to see that through and give them a fair shake and an evaluation.
And Dan, I guess I misspoke. I didn't mean to table the interview process. I meant to table the decision after the process and keep AVEC in there as a alternative based on cost.
Dan, maybe this is where my comment that I was going to make would come into play.
Okay, go ahead.
I would like to make sure that I'd like to put it to a vote for the advisory board to, after the interviews next week in the Watermaster meeting, that no decision is made to go forth with negotiations on any contract until it comes back to the advisory board in October. After those interviews, we should have that opportunity to have this discussion again.
Dan, I moved for a motion for what Julie's saying.
This is John Ugasted. I'll second that motion.
Well, Julie, can you articulate so that we can make sure that we capture the point you're making? And then I'll go through the process and get another second on that. And I'm not asking for another second. I'm trying to adhere to procedure. So Julie, what is your motion?
My motion is before contract negotiations would begin, because if you look at the minutes of the agenda for the Watermaster Board for next week, under closed session, it's going to be discussed to proceed with an administrator contract negotiations. I would like to see that portion tabled, and after the interviews, that it is on our agenda to have that discussion back at the advisory level. So then we can give our input to the Watermaster Board. Is that clear to you, Dan?
Yeah, let me state it back to you then. What you're wanting is the advisory board to be involved in the negotiation phase.
Yes, I don't want negotiations to start at the closed session in October, or excuse me, in September. After those interviews, the discussion needs to come back to the advisory.
Okay. All right. I think
You can clean that up, Dan, you know what.
Yeah, no, I can. I'm being careful because I want to make sure that I'm getting exactly what you want. And I believe it is that prior to entering into negotiations, you wanted to get kicked back to the advisory committee so that we can participate on some level in the negotiation phase. Is that
That's
accurate?
right.
Okay.
That's right.
Can I cut in real quick one
Of
more
course,
time?
Linda. Absolutely.
I believe the closed session item is more to choose the applicant to start negotiations with. And yes, we will start negotiations once they're chosen. But I just wanted to make it clear that I believe they're going to choose somebody to start negotiations with.
Yeah, so they choose them, and I guess Julie, to try to make sure that we're all on the same page, you're wanting the advisory committee to be involved prior to the selection or after?
Prior to those negotiations,
Okay, no matter who it is.
no matter who it is.
Okay, all right.
No matter who it is. You see, having it on the agenda, that tells me that there's a possibility they're going to come out of closed session and say, we took a vote, we are going to enter in contract negotiations with party X.
Okay.
That shouldn't, I would like to see that not happen, because after the interviews, all of us should have the opportunity. There may be some other questions, and frankly, we don't know the exact questions that are going to be asked, by the board or by admin at this time. So I'd like to hear what that discussion is and bring it back to our level so we can give input to the Watermaster board. That it just seems like that should be the right order.
Julie, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
How do we bring in Gary's comment about AVIC being willing to extend their AVIC as the administrator, and get that in the middle of all this? How does that get done before we even pick or go into negotiations?
Well, let me just see if I can jump in to try to continue moving this in a positive direction. Once they select who they are going to negotiate with, doesn't mean that there isn't going to be some degree of time between the selection and then the negotiation process, where, to address what you're saying, Gary, and what you have raised, Julie, to where that question back to AVEC can be raised. I'm trying to be sensitive to Angel's information, which is that AVEC has asked that we continue to move forward through this process.
Yes.
And I get that, but we don't want any repercussions if we interview and then select somebody and then say, oh, we don't want you because we extended AVEC. Is the fact that AVEC's already in there, give them like some kind of place at the table that we can decide, oh, we're going to continue with our current interim administrator.
Here's the problem, and I think what we're trying to work through here is we don't have an affirmative statement before us today that AVEC wants to do it and they want to be considered. And in fact, what we have is the counter to that, which is AVEC wants us to. So, and I think what Angel's saying is, at least based upon what she understands, is AVEC wants us to move through this process, which would necessarily include selecting somebody, one of the two applicants, and then entering into negotiations. And just because you're negotiating doesn't necessarily mean that you have to come out of that negotiation with a deal. So,
and what Julie's saying is we want to put a stopgap in there to keep the option open, that nothing gets done. And if the AVEC board just says, yeah, we can go ahead and keep AVEC in there, we want to say, okay, sorry, we will go with you, but we can't, our interim wants to stay in place, so thank you, but we're going to stay with our interim. That's all. I'm putting it very roughly, but you can clean that up too.
Okay, I do think that, so the motion would be to allow the advisory committee to participate in the negotiation with the entity that is selected following this upcoming board meeting. Correct, Julie?
Yes, but I still think, no, that really isn't where I'm going with this, Dan. I feel like before a negotiation discussion is had at the Watermaster level in their closed session, that after the interviews, we, as the advisory board, have the ability to comment on those interviews. Maybe things, I don't know what will be revealed, during those interviews. But I think we should have the discussion at our level before the Watermaster board attempts to enter into a discussion on a contract with a new administrator. It seems like we're out of order there.
Again, I got a comment.
Go ahead, Brent.
I'm just confused because the opening statement was supported by a few others, that the two parties that submitted proposals, we were opposed to that because of any affiliation with a public agency. So that would discredit their qualifications, yet we're all for a public agency running it. I guess I just need a little clarity there. And then the RGS comment, if there's one party in the valley that's done business with RGS, it would be a conflict of interest. Although all of us have done business with AVEC, so if one party has been sideways with AVEC, it should disqualify AVEC. It seems like we have contradicting statements that aren't very clear for the two parties involved, I guess.
Yeah, Brent, I think your point is well taken. And I agree with you that it doesn't square with the position that we're taking.
I can gauge the direction, the direction that this is going, and I get it, but it just seems like there needs to be more merit behind it because we're making conflicting statements there.
So here's what I would propose to do in order to make sure that we're not still discussing this during the lunch hour, but I want to make sure everybody gets an opportunity to make their point. I'm happy to take a vote on this. And remember, we are an advisory committee, so it doesn't necessarily mean that the board has to follow what we are asking, but they certainly would consider it. But I'll take a vote on that, and at the end of the day, the board will take our recommendation. They will consider it and then make a decision based upon their own agency, so to speak. But I will include the comments that have been made. They can review the comments and then they can raise those issues to the extent that they want to during the interview process. But I don't think that our comments here should be interpreted as far as anything other than comments and or recommendations for the board to consider.
Oh, Dan, I made a motion.
No, I know that, Julie. I'm not trying to.
Okay.
Like I said, we're going to vote on it.
Yeah.
But it's basically, you would like the advisory committee to have an opportunity to participate in the negotiation with whichever candidate the board elects to enter into negotiations with at the next advisory committee, or at least discuss it at the next advisory committee meeting. Before the negotiations begin. All right. Sorry, Nancy's here keeping track of everything here. I'm trying to multitask.
Dan, I thought we want to be involved in the selection before they pick the candidate for negotiations, is what Julie's saying.
That's right now. We have the proposals in front of us, the selection process, and that's right now.
Yes, but next week's Watermaster meeting, on their closed session agenda, it says that they're going to, possibility of entering in negotiations with a candidate. That's the part that what I would like to see is that extended out a month. After the interviews next week, we'll all have comments on how those interviews went. That should come back to the advisory in October. It's a month extension is what it is, Dan.
I understand. I understand where you're going.
I know you get it.
Julie, you're saying they're skipping a point. There's overstepping and having interviews, and then they should have us re-talk about the selection of the two after the interview.
Following the interviews.
Yes.
And I'll make a comment. I think we're pretty much with the two candidates, no matter what. I would just keep it to two candidates. And my only thing is wait on the new information from Gary Van Dam that we keep it open for AVIC. I know they haven't made a clear statement, but I don't think there should be any selection until we put it definitively that where AVIC is the board. And because I think you should have three candidates if that's the case, but that's just my input.
So, all right, Julie, so to make sure that what you want is the ability for the advisory committee to offer comments to the board following the completion of interviews, and you want the board to delay entering into negotiations until it receives those comments.
Yes.
Okay, all right, that's the motion.
I knew you could do that.
Oh, man.
And make it clear.
It took longer than I wanted, but that's all right. All right, so we've got a motion. Is there a second?
I think John Ukestead made the second.
Well, there was a second, but at that point, the motion was word salad, which is my problem. I'm asked to call for a second, Gary. Thank you.
I'll second that.
All right, thank you, Brent. All right, I'm going to take a vote. And before I do that, Angel, can you tell me, as far as the people who are present and don't have an alternate available, typically speaking, and this is for my education, Dennis does not ask the alternate unless the primary is not present, correct?
I believe that to be correct, Dan.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
And then before I take the vote, who is here today in an alternate capacity, just so I can make sure that I'm not calling for the wrong person?
This is Matt. I believe I'm an alternate today. I think the rest of the landowner group is here.
Okay. And then the person you're the alternate to, Matt, is who? Not to put you on the spot.
Am I an alternate to a specific person or just the landowner generally?
Typically, it's a specific person or group.
I apologize. I didn't realize that was the case. I thought it was if any one of the landowners was out, I could be.
I think you know what, I'm looking at the list. I think you're just you get to participate by listening, Matt.
Sounds good.
All right, perfect. All right. Julie Kyle.
Yes.
I'll vote no. Gary Godey.
Yes.
Gary Van Dam.
Yes.
David Thompson.
No.
Stan.
A close one, but no.
Brent Byrne.
I'll vote no.
James.
I abstain from this one.
Okay. Kim Domingo.
I'll abstain.
John Ukestead.
Yes.
He's an alternate. Bruce Nelson.
Yes.
Richard Wood. Richard's not on. Ron Hawkins. Still not. Anybody on? And then we've got our ex officio members. Ron Hawkins. Richard Morris and Joe Quintero. All right, let me tally the votes. Stand by. I've got 5 yeses and 4 noes and 2 abstentions. Okay. I believe that just by simple majority that passed. We'll go ahead and note that in the summary to the board. Thank you, everybody, on that. Now let's real quick here move on to Provost and Pritchard. And my question there is, does anybody have any specific questions, comments, or observations as it relates to their proposal?
Well, if I thought maybe we were past that part of it, I think Brent and I thought we were.
And that was my point about saying a lot of these comments are global, with the exception of the virtual component of RGS. I think the comments can be generally applied, with the exception of virtual, to both. Now I'm calling for any specific observations as it relates to Provost and Pritchard. Doesn't sound like there are.
Well, for me, number one, the cost was too high. As I stated last time, I absolutely did not like the statement that they were concerned about finding out who the big players were. That is just off the reservation for me. I cannot believe you'd make that comment.
Okay.
That should not be a discussion.
All right. So I think what you're doing is you're restating your previously raised comments.
Yes.
Okay.
That's it.
All right. Understood. All right. Then what I'm going to next move to is item 7 on the consent agenda, which would be the financial report and then the payment of bills. We can go ahead and vote on these in bulk unless somebody wants to have something pulled specifically from the consent agenda. Is there any motion to do that?
Well, Dan, can I ask a couple of questions of Angel just for some clarifications on some of the invoices?
Of course, fire away. Angel on the hot seat.
Oh, what's that?
Is it Angel's on the hot seat?
No, I just, on the new production invoices, in particular, that La Cosepa that's out on 165th Street East, I think it is. I know that you had mentioned to us that they reported everything and then they made a payment. They had a check come back?
Yeah, so the signature on their check, I guess didn't match the bank, so we received the check back, or they did. We received a note from the bank. But I did speak with Sister Christina out there yesterday, and we have resubmitted the invoice, which is now much larger since they've are now past due, and they have to pay the 2024 replacement water rate for 2023 as well. So hopefully we'll get that payment, Julie. I'll keep you posted.
Okay. And then can you give me a little bit of clarification as to who Carlos and Paola Diaz Hernandez is? I think they're on page 72. They have a pretty hefty balance. Do they have some type of a farm?
Yeah, so Carlos and Paola Diaz, they are a new producer and they have that pistachio farm. they did previously come to the board and ask that we adjust their invoice. I believe their invoice was adjusted at the, let me see, what page did you say that was up here? 72?
I think on this week's package, it was on 72.
Oh, okay.
Because I thought it was
believe there
adjusted as well.
Yeah, so the reason why that they were approved that their invoice be adjusted in August for they submitted new production reports. However, our finance department did not adjust that invoice at this time. She just corrected it yesterday. So you'll notice on the delinquent assessment list that we're going to certify, there's every invoice that was approved in August for adjustment does not show on that, but she has corrected it since then, and the new one will be in the agenda packet for the board. So let me just see what their new amount's going to be, if I can find it real quick for you. Sorry, maybe I don't have it real quick. But anyways, it's much less. I think it's about $8,000.
Okay.
This is Pam. If I can jump in and be helpful, their new balance is $4,686.30.
Okay.
There you go.
And,
are we talking about
then,
Carlos and Paola Diaz?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Pam and Angel. Then my other question is, can we get some clarification on Eastside Union School Districts?
Sure, I can help with that. So Eastside Union School District reached out to the Watermaster because they would like to replace their well. Their well hasn't operated, I believe, since 2022, maybe, or beginning of 2022. So in order to replace that well, they do need to come into compliance with the Watermaster. So I've been working with them, collecting all past due production reports. We recently invoiced them for all past due replacement water assessments and administrative assessments. They are working on intervening in the judgment. They will have a new new production application, I believe next month's meeting, because since they are not a party to the judgment, any production that they do is considered new production. So they are at this time just coming into compliance with the judgment.
And Angel, is that site specific to Eastside School out on 70th and H?
Yes.
Or is it all of those schools?
Elementary school, yes.
Oh, okay, so it is just site specific to that one?
Yes.
Oh, okay, interesting. All right. And then just one other question that I had, I'm sorry to keep this going. On Wilsona Gardens, I know that they're supposed to be making payments. So they're under a separate contract with us. Are they staying current on their payments?
Pam, if you're still on the line, do you know, I believe they are, Julie, but I'd rather have Pam answer that. Do you know if Wilsona Gardens is up to date on all of their payment plan payments? Maybe Pam's not on the line anymore, Julie, but I think all of our payment plans are staying on top of their payments.
I'm sorry, I was just muted. If you can hear me. Yeah, they are current. Their last payment was made on July 9th, and they don't have any outstanding payments due at this time.
Great, thank you guys very much.
All right, Julie, if you keep asking questions, we're gonna invoice you.
Angel, Angel, I want to piggyback on Julie. What about Antelope Valley Resources Conservation District? What is their story?
You know what, that one, I don't have any answers for. I believe that's in Craig's hands at this time, so I don't really have any answers for that one. Sorry, Gary.
Are they currently still pumping or what?
That I don't know. I
Can
don't
we
know.
find out for next month's meeting?
Sure. I can. Well, they are currently, I can't answer that because they submit production reports. So yes, they are currently pumping. They're pumping much less than they used to. I think when they first came about, they were pumping somewhere near 30 acre feet of water, and now they're under 10. So yes, they are still pumping water.
Okay, but you can get us a report from Craig or
Yes,
a memo? Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Dan, I have one quick question. Maybe Pam or Angel could answer it. On page 70, for the disbursements for August, were those 2 months worth of disbursements?
Brent, I'm gonna have to see if Pam can answer that because, like I said in the past, I don't really work with the financials of Watermaster, so I don't have all the answers there. Pam?
I'm just trying to calculate. I'm just curious to calculate annual fees.
Right. Can you repeat that question again for me, please?
Sure. Page 70, disbursements in August, specifically for the administrator and legal. It almost appears like that might have been 2 months worth.
Oh, Brent, I can't answer that. Craig, I do believe that there were 2 of Craig's invoices because he was out of town and wasn't able to get the invoice to the Watermaster in time for the last agenda.
Okay. And then how about AVEC? Just if I'm trying to extrapolate that out over 12 months to have a better understanding of where we're looking at on annual fees. Because it looks like this month's invoice is much lower than that. So if I'm just trying to calculate projections.
I can't really speak for AVEC why our invoice was potentially lower. I can say for Craig, that was 2 months of services.
Well, it looks like the month prior was 19,000 and this month it was just under 9.
Could that have to do with maybe a little bit more work from staff for the?
Brent, that was because invoicing, so Pam sent out invoices or reminder letters. I believe that was more time on Pam's part when it came to invoice. Yeah.
Very good.
But I can get that real answer for you and get back.
No, yeah, and I was just trying to get a feel for kind of what our annual fees would look like. And I noticed that to some of the points earlier on AVEC's invoice this month, I mean, it was as far as true costs, and hey, if it's a discount, we can all benefit from it, great. I'm not opposed to AVEC administering it. Let me state that. But $33 for facilities and postage, that's a really cheap facilities fee. Thank you, AVEC.
And remember too, they stepped in there when Hallmark was there and always provided,
Yep.
the location. So they've been.
I just don't know if there's any other business that can get away with $35 a month for facilities. So if we're getting that true cost. But hey, if we all benefit from it, great.
You bet.
Okay, folks, any other specific questions as it relates to the financial report? Okay, hearing none then, just get a vote then on the consent agenda financial report and payment of bills. Can I get a motion to approve?
Move to approve, Kyle.
Thank you, Julie. And can I get a second, please?
I'll second that, Brent.
Thanks, Brent. Okay. Julie, Kyle.
Yes.
I vote yes. Gary Godey.
Yes.
Gary Van Dam.
Yes.
David Thompson.
Yes.
Stan Powell,
Yes.
Brent Byrne,
Yes.
James Chasen,
Yes.
Kim Domingo,
Yes.
John Ukestead,
Yes.
Bruce Nelson.
Yes.
All right, thank you. That motion passed. Let's next move down to 3.9, consideration and possible action to certify the 2024 delinquent assessment list. Angel, what would you like us to do here?
Dan, this is just, so this delinquent assessment list is required by the judgment that we certify the delinquencies each year. As I mentioned before, the delinquent assessment list that is in the advisory committee packet is a little different than what's going to be certified at the next meeting and presented to the board because of those August invoices that were not adjusted as they should have been when they were approved. So the new total for the delinquent assessments will now be about 1.14 million instead of the 1.19 million.
Okay.
So I don't know if you guys need to approve this or what you guys want to do with this information, but it is a requirement of the judgment.
Perhaps we could get a conditional approval based upon the revisions being presented to the board.
That sounds great.
Okay. It sounds to me like you'd like us to vote on this? Given it's a
That would be
certification?
fine, yeah.
Okay. Can I get a quick motion?
Move to approve, Kyle.
Thank you, Julie. Second?
Van Dam, second.
Thank you, Gary. I'm going to go ahead and just to see if we can speed this along a little bit. Is there anybody who would vote against this? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to reflect this as a unanimous vote to approve or certify. Let's next talk to this. We're now at 3.10, discussion on audit services and possible request for proposal. Angel, can you help with this one in terms of what you would like us to do?
Yeah, so staff is coming to the board because our current contract with the auditor is coming up to expire. So we would just like board direction on possibly going out for a request for proposal or keeping the current auditor. I do know that it is staff's recommendation, or I don't know if it's a recommendation, but they do think that it's prudent to continue with CJ Brown to provide the audit services to the Watermaster for a minimum of 1 year to help support a true or a smooth transition in case or when there is a new administrator. Since they know the judgment, they understand the Watermaster's finances, staff just thinks it would be best if the Watermaster stayed with CJ Brown for 1 more year.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's okay, but we are asking, would the board like us to go out for a proposal or stick with CJ Brown? That is the question to the board.
Okay, can I get a motion to stick with staff's recommendation?
Move to approve, Kyle.
Okay, Julie voted, it's Julie's motion, John Ukestead seconded, and I'm gonna do this again similar to what I just did. Is there anybody who would be voting against this motion? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to go ahead and reflect in our meeting minutes that that the motion passed unanimously. Let's move next down to 3.11. Consideration and possible action to approve the 2024-2025 U.S. Geological Survey Joint Funding Agreement. Angel, do you want to go ahead and take it away?
Sure, no problem. So as you all know, the Antelope Valley Watermaster administers the USGS contract, joint agreement contract. This year, the total cost of the program is $106,500. The Watermaster will be responsible for about $76,000 of that contract. But with the contributions of the others, they will, let's see here, sorry, I didn't really make notes on this, Dan, so I'm just kind of.
That's all right, I put you on the spot.
It's okay. So the Watermaster will contribute $29,880. And let's see, I feel like there's a better place where I can find all this information. Here we go. The AV State Water Contractor Association with 50%, they will contribute $38,310. The AV Irwin Group will contribute their 25%, which will be $19,155. And AV Watermaster with their 25% will also be the $19,155.
And I take it, just from a clarification standpoint, those contribution levels are the same as what we've done previously?
They are the same. The contract went up a little bit this year, but not too much as the previous year. But yes, these are the same contributions as past years.
Okay, thank you. Can I get a motion on this, please?
You can say it, I'll make the motion.
Okay, John's got the motion. Can I get a second, please?
I'll second that, Brent.
Thank you, Brent. Again, in the interest of time saving, is there anybody who would vote against approving this?
You know, before I vote, Dan, I just did want to confirm with Angel. So our partners in this, they have committed to these amounts. Do we know that they're going to pay them? Is there any question?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay,
So,
that's what I need to know.
an MOU was just recently done with the AV Irwin Group that included the new contribution, or the contribution for the USGS contract. And then AV State Water Contractors has also agreed to continue their funding.
Okay, thank you, Angel.
You're welcome.
Good follow-up, Stan. Thank you for asking that. With Stan's clarifying question, and again, back to the vote, would there be anybody who would vote against this? Any no votes? Okay, hearing none, the minutes will reflect that it passed unanimously. Let's move next on to 3:12, consideration and possible action to review the May 2024 new production invoices.
Okay, so as you know, staff has been working with the new producers that were invoiced in May 2024 with the new producers that did not submit a 2023 production report. This past month, I have worked with 3 new producers, and they are here on your screen. I've collected all of the past due production reports, and as you can see, 1 or 2 wells not drilled yet, and the other one, the well is not complete. No pump is installed at this time. So we are asking that their adjusted invoice amount be 0 due to no production.
Okay, are there any questions from the group to Angel? Okay, Angel, you got off easy on that one. Are you looking for a vote on this?
Yeah, so to approve the adjusted invoices shown on the memo on page 120 of the agenda pack.
Say that again.
To approve staff to adjust the invoices shown on page 120 of your agenda packet.
Okay, all right, thank you. Can I get a motion, please?
Move to approve, Kyle.
Thank you, Julie. Second? Or is there a second?
I'll second that, Brent.
All right, thanks, Brent. All right, and again, doing this in the negative, would anybody vote against this motion? Okay, hearing none, it will be so reflected in the minutes that it passed unanimously. Let's next now go to 3:13, consideration of possible action on approval of letter of support for the AVSWCA culverts project.
Dan, I'm gonna go ahead and pass this one to Pam if she's on the line, because she's been working on this project with the AV State Water Contractors. I think she has more knowledge than I do on the.
Okay, sounds good. Pam, you've got the mic.
Sure, thank you. So staff is recommending that the board approve signing a letter of support for the AV State Water Contractors Association grant application to the Water Smart Grant Program, and that is for the Antelope Valley Groundwater Recharge and Roadway Creek Passage Project. That grant application is being worked on jointly with the County of Los Angeles, and it's for the installation of 3 different culvert installations that will help reduce flooding on roadways, and then allow us to use the natural creek beds to recharge for projects like the Little Rock Creek Recharge Project, Upper Amagosa Creek. We are trying to get that application done by October 7th. We're on a very short deadline. And we're just looking for support from the Watermaster. The idea is, of course, with local recharge, we'll be able to help, improve the basin, subsidence, and, that would be the benefit for Watermaster. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Pam. Are there any questions for Pam?
Yeah, this is Stan. Trying to figure out how to frame my question. So part of this work by the Contractors Association and what the Watermaster would be supporting is characterized as in part a recharge program. But there's no real detail. Is this, at the end of this, is someone going to make a claim for additional stored water based on this culvert program?
No, what the program would be supporting, it's a multi-benefit program. So there would be, the benefit of the improvement of roadways with the culvert installation. And then it would just enable us to recharge, at the planned rates for the projects that are listed. We would be able to continue recharge if we have a year that, we have an, high rain or there's incredible flooding on the roads. Those culverts are going to help with reducing flooding, so we can just continue to recharge for existing projects.
I think those, as my understanding of those projects, Pam, is that those projects recharge imported water. And the
Yes,
water
that's correct.
that's going to be possibly managed by this program is not imported water. And that's where I think there may be an issue. I don't know what the program is, but if it's imported water, then there's an accounting done by the Watermaster, and the project proponents of, Little Rock Creek or Big Rock Creek or Amagosa Creek gets a credit that they can pump out based on the imported water they've added to the basin. Here it's local water, and I don't think that's covered by their programs. And I think that might be water that is probably going to recharge the basin anyway. So I guess I'd like to, go ahead.
That would still be imported water. Just using Little Rock Creek as an example, the project partners there would be Little Rock, Palmdale, and AVEC. AVEC would still be using that project as planned to recharge imported water, but we would just be using the natural creek. There's no, additional recharge facilities being developed. We already have piloted that project. What the culverts would do would just enhance our ability to do that, like on a continuum, as we would be able to. If, for example, we had flooding on the roadways, we may have to back off what we already are recharging of imported water. But there's no additional recharge projects being developed. It's just going to enhance the existing recharge projects that are already using imported water.
Yeah, I still think it would be helpful to have a clarification that this water being managed through the culverts is not generating a claim for stored water.
No, it would be accounted for through the Watermaster, just as it would be, if AVEC was recharging water through Little Rock Creek, there'd be an accounting through the Watermaster for what's been recharged. But the actual culverts project is not going to change the water that's already being recharged in the basin through those projects, if that's what you're asking.
Close, because yes, the folks operating those banking projects will continue to claim a credit for the imported water that comes in and is recharged.
Yes,
the water associated with the culvert project is runoff off the adjacent hills, not imported water. And that water would otherwise be contributing to the native safe yield, which is the basis for parties like me having a production right. We have a share of the native safe yield. And so this may help the operations with imported water. If that helps the agencies, recharge more imported water, that's great. But no one's trying to claim a credit on this local water that's not imported water. That's why I'm trying to.
No, that the culverts project would not result in somebody trying to claim a credit on non-imported water. We'd only be using the natural waterway to recharge additional imported water that's being brought into the basin.
Okay. I think thank you, Pam. That's what I was looking for. I guess to the advisory committee, I think it would be worth in a motion asking it to be clarified that the water being passed through the culverts, if not imported water, would not be credited as stored water under the judgment.
Got it.
And I don't think that changes the intent. I just want to make it clear what the accounting is and that this water doesn't get accounted for in that way.
So Stan, I think what you're suggesting that would be a motion to conditionally approve so long as we receive clarification as to the accounting of the non-imported water, or not, it's not included in the imported water allotment.
I'd word it this way. I'd say move to approve, subject to a confirmation that no party will be making a claim for stored water based on the culvert project.
Okay, that makes better sense. Far more artful than my word salad.
Yeah, and that language should not interfere in any way with those agencies' operations with imported water, because that's not really based on the culvert project.
Yeah, what you're talking about is any additional flows that would be moving through those creeks based on the culvert project outside of what water that's being imported and recharged. You want to make sure that water would not, nobody would be laying claim to that water.
Yes, and I'm asking the question and making the comment. I don't believe that was the intent of this. I just thought we should say it clearly.
Okay, no, understood, and that's a good point you bring up, and I think we can confirm that because, we're not changing any scope to any of the existing projects, simply removing water from the roadways, so that water doesn't become backed up and we can continue to recharge imported water in the creeks.
Yes, understood. Thank you, Pam.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, I've got a motion from Stan. Is there a second?
Yuka said second.
All right, thank you, John. Let me try this with this one. Are there any no votes that would be cast as it relates to Stan's motion? Okay, hearing none, we will go ahead and show that as being unanimously passed.
Say, Dan, this is Stan. I'm going to email you a written version of what I read to you.
I was just going to, Nancy's over here with her head spinning on her shoulders, and so that will be very helpful, so thank you. But I do think that what you've stated was clear enough for us to get a vote on that. So thank you. Let's move next down to on our agenda 314, possible action on transfer applications. The first is 14A, identified as R-24-47. Angel, do you want to go ahead and give us the rundown on this?
Sure. So this is a transfer application between Calandry Farms and Gene Willer Farms. It's a one-time carryover transfer of 728 acre feet. Here on the screen, you can see the original parcels for the Calandry Farms where the water originated, and there are no parcels to be transferred to because this is a transfer for investment purposes only. I can answer any questions if you have any.
Does anybody have any questions for Angel? Okay, hearing none, can I get a motion, please?
Move to approve, Kyle.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that, Brent.
Okay, I'm going to keep doing it this way because it seems to be working. Are there any no votes as it relates to this transfer? Okay, hearing none, it will reflect in the minutes that it passed unanimously. Let's move next on to R-24-48, Tivoli Investment to Antelope Valley Water Trust.
Okay, this is a one-time carryover transfer, and it is 300 acre feet of water, and this one is also for investment purposes only. So there's no material injury conducted, and there's no parcels where the water is going to be transferred to. And I can answer any questions on this one too.
Are there any questions?
Angel, where's that water coming from?
Go ahead.
That's Tivoli Investments. That's the Calandry Farms, Calandry Water Company parcels. They're listed here.
Okay, what was the name of that company?
Tivoli Investments. They received their production right from Calandry Water Company.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Hearing none, can I get a motion and a second, please?
Move to approve, Kyle.
The second?
I'll second that, Brent.
Thanks, Brent. Okay, any votes against this one? Okay, hearing none, it will be shown in the minutes that it passed unanimously. Let's move next now to 315, consideration of possible action on new production application identified as R-24-49.
Okay, so this is a new production application for a domestic well in the southeast sub area, and they are requesting 1 acre foot of water. And if you have any questions, I can answer for this application too.
Are there any questions for Angel? No questions for Angel. Can I get a motion and a second, please?
Yuka said motion. So moved.
Thank you, John. And a second?
Kyle, second.
Thanks, Julie. Are there any votes against this one? Okay, hearing none, the minutes will reflect unanimous passage of this particular item. Next is 316, new point of extraction identified as R-24-50. Angel.
Okay. Yep, this is a new point of extraction application. Stanley and Kathleen Petrie are a known small pumper to the judgment, and they are requesting a new well to stop sharing their existing well. This well will be located in the southeast sub area. It's for domestic use, and as a small pumper, they can pump up to 3 acre feet of water without metering and reporting or paying a replacement water assessment. I can answer any questions on this one as well.
Any questions? Okay, hearing none, can I get a motion and a second, please?
Yuka said, I'll move.
Thank you, John. And a second?
Kyle, second.
Thank you, Julie. Are there any no votes for this one? Okay, hearing none, we'll show that it passed unanimously. Next, go to 317, monitoring well application identified as R-24-51. Angel,
All right, so, yep, this monitoring well was requested by Waste Management. The purpose of this well is to monitor groundwater levels on the north side of the Antelope Valley Public Landfill and to collect small quantities of groundwater for laboratory analysis and contingent. They will pump less than 0.25 acre feet of water per year. And if you have any questions on this one, I'd be happy to answer them.
any questions? Hearing none, can I get a motion and a second, please? Don't everybody jump in at once.
Kyle, motion.
Thanks, Julie. You're really getting a workout today on this. Is there a second?
I'll second it, Brent.
Thanks, Brett. All right. Sorry, John. We'll have to wait till the next one. Are there any no votes? Okay, hearing none, we'll note that it approved unanimously. Let's next go to 318. This is a possible action on replacement well applications. R-24-52. Angel, you're up.
Yep, okay, so this is the last application on the agenda, and this is a replacement well application for Deborah Minter. It is in the West Antelope Club area, and she is requesting a replacement well because of her existing well produces very little water and is insufficient to meet their needs. If anybody has any questions, oh, and she is a small pumper. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Any questions for Angel?
Angel, whereabouts in the west?
You know, it's in the near Rosamond area. I'm not exactly sure. I did not make notes on the exact location, but it is in Kern County, John.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Okay, hearing none, can I get a motion and a second on this one?
So moved. Yuka said.
Thank you, John. And a second?
Second, Kyle.
Thanks, Julie. Are there any no votes?
Hey, Dan, can I just ask one question?
Sure, fire away.
Oh, sorry to interrupt, but I was under the impression if there was an existing well, that a replacement well, if it was within a certain distance, it didn't require like application. Did I misunderstand that?
Yeah, so if you would like to replace a well and it's within 300 feet of the existing well, then a replacement well application is required. And if it's beyond the 300 feet, you would do a new point of extraction well application. The difference is that the replacement well application does not require material injury analysis from the Watermaster engineer, whereas the new point of extraction application does require that material injury analysis, but any replacement well does need to be approved by the Watermaster.
Okay, thanks, Angel.
You're welcome.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Are there any no votes? Okay, hearing none, we will show in the minutes that it passed unanimously. We're now moving on to agenda item 4, advisory committee discussion items requested. It's not applicable.
Yeah, and real quick before you move on, I just have a comment. The Watermaster engineer asked that we include their report in the advisory committee agenda as well as the board packet. They're just reports. They wanted you guys to see them. So I don't know if you guys have any discussion or they were not listed on the advisory committee agenda, but I did just want to note that they are there, and they did ask that you guys review their reports or at least have knowledge of them. So
Okay, and thank you for that. That's on us. We prepared the agenda, so.
No, that's okay. There's no action or anything. They just wanted to let you know that they were there. That's all.
Duly noted. Okay, and Stan, you had a comment?
Yeah, it was on the same matter, but I do note that it looks like they've asked for input rather than just making us aware. So it's not a action item by the board, but we are being requested to give input if we have it. And I looked at it and I had some input. We've had a long meeting. I'm not sure if you want to go through my questions, or maybe I can just send them off directly to the Watermaster engineer. I do that at your pleasure.
Stan, why don't we go ahead and take you up on that offer? And if you would like, send that to me as well, and we'll include that in the meeting minutes.
Okay, I will do that. So there's a slide, model update considerations, which talks of, well, that's the first one. The first one I had comments on was using the model and developing guidelines on model use for material injury analysis. So I had several questions on that. First one is, will the guidelines include criteria to decide when injury becomes material? And I don't know exactly what the answer is, but I don't think we have examples where the Watermaster engineer has found material injury that we can glean what the Watermaster engineer thinks is significant. So I don't know what the form is, but a simple thing would be, well, if your water levels drop 50 feet, that's material. I don't know what their approach is, but it seems like this would be a good time to start defining that.
Okay, and that makes sense. Thank you, Stan, for that comment.
The second question is, I often make comments about cumulative material injury, and I think the model is going to be a particularly helpful tool to evaluate material injury for some of these larger projects and activities. And so I guess I have a couple questions on that. How are we going to identify which activities we're going to include in the analysis? And I'm assuming the answer is going to be things like a large program, like a bank program, production of large amounts of carryover water, transfers of large amounts of water are the sorts of things that would be considered. And then the second question I had is, so if we find something that we think is a cumulative material injury, and it's cumulative because several parties contribute to it, how is the responsibility to mitigate that material injury going to be allocated by the Watermaster? First one who is out there, is it going to be proportional to how big their contribution is? I don't know. It seems like another question we probably want to start getting some definition on. That same slide asks a question if a model is required for complicated analyses dealing with permanent changes. And my question is, I'm not sure what's meant by permanent changes. It'd be helpful if they could define that. It also indicates that the model might be required to look at subbasin changes. I'm assuming they're referring to something where water is being transferred between subbasins, but I'd like to know if that's what they meant. And then finally, it has a question about who pays and how is cost estimate determined and overseen by the board. And I wasn't sure exactly what all the context is, but I did have one question that came to mind. Is the analysis we're worried about one that's required because someone initiates an application, saying for a storage agreement? Well, then maybe the applicant should pay. But what if the analysis is initiated by the Watermaster, who's required, I think, to look at material injury with regard to the balance assessment, which is to protect everyone's production rights? So I think we need more detail about what they're concerned with there.
Okay.
And then mercifully, my last comment goes on the last slide in progress. And it has 3 bullet items. The second bullet item is carryover tool development. And my question is, what is the carryover tool? And so I will be giving you written versions of all those questions, Dan, but those were the ones I came up with.
Okay. And they're good questions. So thank you, Stan. I'll toss this out to the rest of the committee. If you have your own independent observations or questions, or if Stan's comments have generated any thoughts. Stan, I think your observations were so complete that everybody is just really happy with them.
I actually think it's exciting to have the model, but I think using a model is going to be complicated. And this is a work in progress. This is going to take a while, I think, for the engineer to figure out how to use it, to figure out how to communicate it to us. So I think we're going to have other opportunities as this develops, hopefully, to ask some questions and provide input.
I think you're right. I'm seeing that play out in other basins that are currently being subject to GSPs or adjudications. So your observations, I think, are spot on. All right. Unless we have any additional comments on that, I'm going to next move update on small pumper committee members. Angel, do we have any update there?
I do not have any updates, Dan.
Okay, thank you. Let's move now to number 6, future agenda items requested by committee members.
Hey, Dan, I'm just curious, for the new production invoicing, probably over the last, 3-4 months, the board, and I agree with being lenient for some of the new production owners that have been let, I guess, if you want to say, let off the hook on their invoicing. My only question to the committee, and maybe it's just a quick discussion, should there not be an administrative fee involved with that, at least $50, $60, I don't know what it is, but to cover Angel's time, because we're taking invoices from $500 to $2,000 and just making them zero. Although, like Angel said, she has to work with after the invoices are generated, then they go back to her, dispute the invoices, she works with them. Regardless, we're all paying for these new production owners who signed the agreement, that understood that they were going to get this stuff. We're all paying to let them get off the hook. I don't disagree with reducing the fees, especially if they haven't even drilled a well yet. I'm just curious if there shouldn't be some flat administration fee for Angel's time. And maybe that's just a quick discussion item.
It's a good question. Angel, can you just give us kind of a back of the napkin estimate in terms of how much time you spend trying to negotiate each one of these?
And to be honest, they're also different. I'm
Right.
sure if we did charge some type of a fee, it would balance itself out over time. So I can't give you a time. Like I said, some are easier than others. I mean, we're waiving their fee. I don't know why it's not just so easy, right?
Right. No, well, there's got to be I's dotted and T's crossed. On the easy ones, typically, how long does that take?
I just tell them what's required of them. I do some research and see, where they're at when they were approved. I look at the property to verify that it is vacant land, and I check my well completion reports to see if I have a well completion report for that property. And then usually I just tell them what production reports are required. I direct them to the website. Some people don't know how to use a website, so I'll just send them to them. And then they just email them back to me. And then once I have all of the information, I add it to my list. But, you know, there's some that I go back and forth with 4 or 5 times before we, you know, get all the information we need. So
Is
like
it-
I said, some are easier than others, but
Or is it reasonable to assume that a typical, in using your term, an easy one is an hour, 2 hours of time?
easy, I would say half hour.
Okay, and then
Hard, maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours over time.
Okay. All right,
And could I add something there too?
sure.
Brent, I really appreciate you bringing this up again. We did struggle with this several months back, and I have a thought, and it's probably not a good thought, but someone working in a public agency is probably the right person to bring the idea to. I've wondered about each of these folks applies for new production, and I'm wondering if some nominal fee, $25 per application, I don't know what the number would be, and everyone pays it, and it's going to be used to do the kind of work that Angel's doing. And when I was thinking about this, Brent, so I have a public water supplier that supplies me water, that sends me a bill every month. And every month stuffed in the envelope is some information communicating to me certain requirements. And the process we have here, our contact with those folks really is during the application, and then there's no contact until an invoice goes out. Maybe some of these fundings could pay, you know, for someone who has an application, maybe we could have some budget for